So, did you all ever sit around when you were kids and compare scars? Like, I got this one from when I fell off my bike, and I got this one here from when I fell out of a tree. We would show them off like they were trophies, proof that we had lived. But as we get older, scars sort of stopped being something that we compared with one another, and they became something we hid. Now, I have my own experiences with hiding scars. So I have an autoimmune disorder called psoriatic arthritis. And the psoriasis, which is a skin condition, began in my 20s before the arthritis had developed. And my embarrassment about having a visible difference with my body left me feeling marked. Working with children, they would ask me about it. And I got pretty good at coming up with simple explanations that could work. But honestly, it was hard. For a while, I dressed differently. I avoided showing parts of my body that might make other folks uncomfortable or concerned for me. And even now, with immunosuppressing medication that helps tremendously, I still have scars and scales that accompany waxing and waning levels of discomfort. But no matter how we show or hide them, our scars tell our stories. Some are visible, like the ones we got as kids, falling off bikes and climbing trees. And some are more hidden, covered up with makeup, bangs, and beards, or clothes. And some are invisible. They're the kind we don't talk about, the kind that don't show up on our skin, but they shape us just the same. A scar means that something happened. A scar means that there was a wound, but now it's closed. But what about the wounds that haven't healed yet? What about the pain that still lingers for us? What about the man sitting at the Pool of Bethesda for 38 years? What happens when healing feels like something that happens for other people, but not for you? So here we have it. We have a man sitting at a pool, and he has been sitting there for 38 years. 38 years of hoping, 38 years of disappointment, 38 years of watching other people get well, get their miracle, while he stays stuck. Now, to give you some real-life comparison, I am 38 years old. So this man has been waiting my entire lifetime for healing. That's a long time to wait. And then here comes Jesus, walking right in the place where people wait for miracles, looking straight at the man and saying to him, "Do you want to be well?" Well, do you? Because healing isn't just about fixing something that's broken. Healing means we leave behind the life we've built around our pain. Healing means stepping into something unfamiliar. Healing means learning how to live as a whole person when you've gotten so used to being broken. Healing means being willing to imagine that you just might get what you hope for. And when we hope, we can be disappointed. So some pain is obvious, but some pain is harder to see. Some pain lives under the surface in the memories we don't talk about, in the betrayals we pretend didn't affect us, in the loss that lingers so much longer than we expect it to. Now, some pain becomes a part of our identity, not because we want it to, but because we don't know how to live without it. It's been with us for so long. And let's be honest, healing is complicated. Because healing requires change. And change, even if it's a good change, kind of terrifying, and it's not always simple. Like, have you ever watched a cut heal? I accidentally scraped myself when I was grating cheese the other day, and so I got to see this up close and personal, although it's healed now. So at first, it's raw and painful. It's exposed. But then something amazing happens. New tissue forms, blood vessels grow, and the body starts weaving itself back together. This process is called granulation. The body clears debris, and then new tissue forms over it. And the body, it doesn't erase what happens. The scar remains even after the new tissue is healed. But the body also doesn't stay broken forever. And grace works in a very similar way. Jesus asks the man, "Do you want to be well?" And notice, the man doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no either. Instead, the man gives Jesus reasons why his healing hasn't happened yet. No one helps me. Someone always gets there first. This is just the way things are. The man, in his response, is attempting to justify his lack of healing. This question from Jesus triggers a sort of defensive stance. And I understand that stance. We feel the judgment of not being healed yet, that we haven't tried hard enough or tried the right thing yet. Because when you've been stuck as long as this man has, for 38 years, you start to lose hope. And you might even start to believe that stuck is just who you are. And maybe that's you. Maybe you have carried something with you for far too long, so long you can't picture your life without it. Maybe you've gotten used to feeling unworthy. Maybe you've built a life around disappointment. Maybe you can't even remember the last time you were pain-free. Maybe you assume that grace is for other people, but not for you. Even in acknowledging my own human frailty, my tendency is to act as though it's not actually part of my identity. Somehow, I've managed to not have that be true. That because my condition is not as bad as my sister's Crohn's disease or endometriosis, which both required surgery and regular infusions, or as bad as my mother's ankylosing spondylitis and the inflammation that attacks her joints, her eyes, her skin, and whole being, that somehow I'm different, that this identity is not a part of me. And because we grew up in the same household, raised by the same woman, my sister's mother and I have, over the course of time, adopted a sort of toughen up attitude and push through it mentality. My husband, Keith, has lovingly calls it toxic femininity. He also likes the word femchismo in my house. Because for us, nothing's that bad. No pain or stomach trouble or illness will stop us from doing whatever we had planned. Until, of course, it does. So, for me, sitting in a pain clinic half-dressed, I received a kind of reassurance that I did not know I needed. I'd been referred there by my doctor for acupuncture, and I had to fill out surveys about my pain to assess whether or not the treatments were helpful and should continue or not. And in speaking with the doctor at the clinic there, I said, "Well, my pain isn't that bad. You see people with real problems every day. My pain isn't debilitating, so I don't really know why I'm here." And that doctor looked at me gently and said, "When was the last time you were pain-free? Not just low levels of pain, but no pain." And that question stopped me. It's like Jesus asking, do you want to be well? It had been so long. I couldn't remember what it felt like to be completely pain-free. I had gotten so used to pain being a part of my existence, if not a part of my identity, that I just couldn't imagine it was possible. I thought, this is just what it feels like to live. But Jesus sees us. And Jesus knows our stories. And still, he asks, do you want to be well? Not, do you deserve healing? Not, have you earned it or tried hard enough? Not, are you ready for it? Just, do you want it? Because grace, it isn't just about forgiveness. Grace is also about healing. So Psalm 34 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. God is not distant from our wounds. God is not indifferent to our pain. God is near. And healing? Healing isn't just about fixing what's wrong. Healing is about wholeness. Healing is about integration, bringing all the shattered parts of ourselves back together. So one writer puts it this way, the world is not seen any longer as embodying this omnipotent sovereign's will, but rather as responding anew to a possibility offered. So that means that God is not handing down decrees from above. God is not forcing outcomes. God is offering healing in every moment, inviting us into a new possibility, a future that's not bound by our past, a life that is not built around our wounds, and a story where grace gets the final word. So what happens next? Now, Jesus doesn't just tell the man at the pool to try harder. Jesus doesn't tell him to prove he deserves it. He doesn't give him a 5-step recovery plan, although we would like one. He just says, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And part of this miracle is that this man does. After 38 years, he stands. After 38 years, he moves. After 38 years, he steps into a future he thought was impossible. And maybe that's what grace is inviting you into today. Maybe today is the day to put down the thing that you've been carrying. Maybe today is the day to allow hope to come into places that you've long abandoned. Maybe today is the day to stop waiting for permission to be healed. Maybe today is the day to hear Jesus say to you, get up, pick up your mat, walk. Because grace is not just about being forgiven. Grace is about being made whole. So Sarah Montana, she stood in a packed auditorium, and she told a story that few people could imagine. Her mother and younger brother were murdered by a teenage neighbor, and she thought she'd forgiven him. But years later, the pain and anger were still there. She felt bitter. She felt consumed by rage. She felt stuck in this moment of loss. And then, one day, she realized she'd been treating forgiveness like a transaction, something to say and then move on and be done with it. But grace doesn't work that way. Healing doesn't erase the wounds so we can ignore them. It transforms it. It doesn't mean you go back to being the person that you were before the pain. Instead, this healing makes you something brand new. It takes the wound and reshapes it into something that no longer controls you. For Sarah, forgiveness wasn't a one-time decision. It was 1,000 small choices to release anger when it tried to take over, to let go of the narrative that revenge was the only way forward, to believe that the man who took everything from her was still human, an image bearer too. And eventually, the weight began to lift. She was able to stand in a courtroom to look at that man who had shattered her family and say the words, "I forgive you," and mean them. Not because he deserved it, not because it made everything okay, but because she refused to let these actions define the rest of her life. We like to think that healing looks like this. The pain stops, the disease disappears, the relationship is restored. But what about when it doesn't? What about when the thing we've been praying for doesn't change? And here's a hard truth. Healing is not always the same as curing. And grace doesn't just cure. Grace makes whole. For some, this healing will be dramatic. The tumor disappears, the addiction is broken, the relationship is restored. But for others, healing is something else. Some of us have been waiting for this healing for a long time. We've prayed, we've believed, we've hoped. And the disease didn't go away. The relationship did not mend. The pain still lingers. So what does grace look like then? Now, grace is not about making everything perfect. Grace is about offering new ways forward. It's learning how to live with what remains. It's finding joy inside of what isn't fixed. It's discovering that grace is not an eraser. Grace is an artist that makes beauty out of what's left behind. So Eugene O'Neill once wrote, "Man is born broken. We live by mending. The grace of God is glue." And I've always struggled when people say, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," because I just don't think that's true. Because sometimes what doesn't kill you leaves you brittle and injured and traumatized. But I wonder if it's a bit more like glue. So if you use wood glue on broken furniture, the furniture itself will be stronger than before it was broken. But before the glue is applied, or the healing is applied, or the grace is applied, it was broken. If you tried to use it or put any weight on it, it would have collapsed. The breaking of the thing did not make it stronger. And glue has to set for a while. If you try and use something too early, it would just collapse again, as it would have before it was fixed. This healing takes time. But one thing is important to remember is that the thing that broke the furniture is not what made it stronger. The glue did. It's not the injury that makes us stronger, but the healing and the grace that transforms us into something new. These scars of ours on our hearts and on our bodies are the evidence of God's grace. And this healing we receive makes us both stronger and softer, which means healing isn't about returning to what was. Healing is stepping into what could be. Now, maybe you're carrying something around today, a wound that still defines you, a betrayal that still stings, a moment of pain that still owns so much of your story. And maybe grace isn't about erasing that wound. Maybe grace is about healing the way you carry it. Maybe grace is about letting go of the weight you weren't meant to hold forever. Because healing isn't pretending nothing happened. Healing is allowing grace to reshape what remains. Healing is choosing to step forward even when the past is trying to hold you back. Healing is having compassion for the work you've done carrying this thing for so long. And healing is trusting that God is still writing your story and that what broke you didn't make you stronger, and it's not where the story ends. Will you pray with me? Gracious God of healing, we come before you, carrying our scars and our wounds, both seen and unseen. We thank you for your grace that heals, not by erasing our pain, but by transforming it. Help us to trust in your healing, to rise and to walk into a future shaped by your love. Amen.